Let's talk to Congressman Doug Collins. He is a ranking House member and a member of the Judiciary Committee. And yesterday he was named as one of the 8 House Republicans to be added to the president's legal team, defense team, I should say. Congressman, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. How are y'all?
Morning. Good. So what are you and the other 7 Republicans going to be doing for the President of the United States? Are you going to be appearing on the House floor, or are you going to be appearing on television?
Well, we're going to be a correspondent media and working. We've been working with, my office and I have been working with the president's attorneys and teams ever since we've been in the House and coming out of the House after the articles were done. And we've been helping, get the facts out. I think this is the biggest thing that is the most unusual part of this whole impeachment exercise. Is in previous impeachments, there was really, frankly, multiple years involved coming up into this process. In this, you have as little as 78 days, in which 71 of which the president was never had any opportunities in his team to be a part of it. So we're providing the insight into the sham that was the House process and actually how bad these 2 articles of impeachment and flimsy they actually are.
Absolutely. Congressman, right, we're getting a look at the rules, you might say, that Mitch McConnell is laying out. Two days of opening statements from both sides. They've got 24 hours split up over 2 days. When you look at how it's laid out, senators are allowed for up to 16 hours for written question, 4 hours of debate. Considering it starts at 1, are we looking at multiple days or a couple of weeks that go late into the night? How do you see it unfolding?
Well, I think Senator McConnell has actually laid out a rather expeditious process here. I think you'll see both cases laid out this week. I think you will not probably see both sides use all of their time. I think they'll use most of it. But as they're going to go through, this is going to be a great time for the American people when the Adam Schiff and the other House impeachment managers get up to lay out this very flimsy case in which they're going to try and distract. They're going to talk about innuendo. They're going to talk about hearsay. They're going to talk about everything except the true fact that they just don't like this president. And then you'll hear the White House counsel get up and begin to lay out the case in a long format to show that what it's actually about. This is actually about a House majority that did not like this president, that did not want him to continue, and they also needed it for next year's election. There couldn't be a better contrast. This morning you just heard the president give a speech. This is what this president does. He talks about what the accomplishments of this country is and its people, and then you contrast this with the pettiness of impeachment this afternoon, in which Speaker Pelosi just tried to get at him ever since she became Speaker last year.
Listen to what Chuck Schumer is saying, calling this a national disgrace. Watch this.
It is now certain that Leader McConnell is going along with President Trump's cover-up, hook, line, and sinker, on something as important and serious as impeachment. Senator McConnell's resolution is a national disgrace. Senator McConnell repeatedly promised the senators, the public, the press, that his rules for the trial would be the same as the rules in the Clinton impeachment. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Are the rules different than they were when President Clinton was impeached?
I think they're different in some ways, but you get the same basic gist of the way these rules are going to fall out. What's the disgrace here, though, frankly, is Senator Schumer, complaining about having to do a trial in which this has been set up before. What he should be complaining about is the absolute disgrace of the House function in getting these articles to the Senate. What he should be complaining about is that they did not do their job in the House, and now the House and Speaker Pelosi are sending it over to the Senate to do the job that if they wanted to do, they could have done themselves. Here's the problem. When you're actually setting it up to say that if the Senate doesn't follow the Democrats' rules, the Senate doesn't do exactly what Adam Schiff or Jerry Nadler or Speaker Pelosi want them to do, then they're saying that it is an illegitimate process. That is the height of saying, I don't have a case, so we're going to blame the other side when it goes wrong.
They're using the phrase
cover-up. The American people will see through this. This is a president who didn't. It's not a cover-up.
How do you respond to that? I mean, that's the charge they're making now for 48 hours. This is a cover-up.
How can it be a cover-up when the sham has been played out in the process for the last 4 months? It cannot be a cover-up when you're blaming the Senate for your own bad work. Let's just put this honestly. The House Democrat majority wanted to impeach the president because they don't like him. They don't like what he stands for. They don't like that he can go give a speech talking about American exceptionalism and how well we're doing in the world. They have an election in November, and they don't like it. So what they don't want to talk about is how bad their articles are, how weak their articles are, and how they didn't do their job. They want to now blame the Senate to say, well, it's a cover-up if you don't let us get our way. That's the height of a temper tantrum most people will see.
You brought up some good points in that Wall Street Journal op-ed. I read it this morning, and you said the articles of impeachment, Nancy Pelosi, the ones that she transmitted, they failed to meet her own criteria. You remind us of what Nancy Pelosi said about impeachment. She said it has to be compelling, overwhelming, and bipartisan. And just in case for the folks at home, they haven't seen her say that, watch.
I've been saying this for 2 years, that he shouldn't be impeached. We can get the facts to the American people through our investigation. It may take us to a place that is unavoidable in terms of impeachment, or not. But we're not at that place.
Impeachment's not on the table.
He's not worth it to divide the country this way.
If a majority of your caucus wants to go forward with an impeachment inquiry, would you go for it?
It's not even close in our caucus about
But eventually,
well, you know what? Why are we speculating on hypotheticals? Nothing as divisive in our country, on my view, than impeachment.
What changed? What changed, Congressman?
Yeah, nothing changed. In fact, it's all still the same. There's nothing compelling about this case. It's definitely not overwhelming. And the only interesting part about this is bipartisan against it. Here's what changed. She looked at the field of Democratic candidates, I believe, and said, uh-oh, we're going to lose again in November next year. We've got to tag impeachment on him. And if you don't believe me, look what they said last week when we actually transmitted the articles and what she's been saying and others have been saying about now he's impeached for life. He can't get rid of this. Right. They're talking about it more as a political stain than actually something that should be seriously taken into account, that the founders said this is the ultimate test of a Congress and a presidency. If they've done something so bad, they have to be removed. They're just simply overturning the will of the people in the last election.
Yeah, but Congressman, you know how politics work. Right now, to Pete's point, they're using the talking point that it's going to be a cover-up unless the Senate calls witnesses. But the job of the senators is to simply act as jurors and hear the evidence gathered by the House. If there was a cover-up, it was in who the Democrats decided to call as witnesses. Ultimately, because that's where you call witnesses. And they did not call Mick Mulvaney, they did not call John Bolton because they knew there would be a court fight, an executive privilege would be expressed, and they'd be right back where they started.
You're exactly right, Steve. I think that's the issue right here. For all these folks now in this faux outrage that I hear about, oh, John Bolton needs to testify, then why didn't Adam Schiff subpoena him?
Right.
He never subpoenaed John Bolton.
Was
he
that
never
a
did these things
Was
because this
that
was
a cover-up, Congressman?
I think it's a cover-up from the fact that Adam Schiff is a fact witness. Adam Schiff does not want the American public how much he and his committee knew about this whistleblower and the issues going forward, because once it found out that he had contact with the whistleblower, all of a sudden the whistleblower became, oh, well, we don't really need the whistleblower's activity. Yeah. Why? Because it shined the light on his activities, which were wrong in the process.
Absolutely. Right. Congressman Doug Collins, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
On this
It's always good to be with y'all.